Hey everyone, how's it going? Azren the language nerd here. Hope you're doing very, very well. Sitting in my car, it's very, very snowy outside. Calgary has been hit with an unexpected amount of snow really early in the season. Normally I find when we have snow, at least this amount of snow and cold weather, it's definitely not happening in October. So it's, I know a lot of people have been a little bit surprised, and a lot of people are not necessarily happy about this cold weather. Personally, I'm okay with it. I've gotten used to it pretty quickly, and weirdly, I think that maybe it's a good thing because we didn't have a ton of rain during the spring and summer, so maybe it's actually a good thing, and let's just say I'm feeling pretty neutral about it all. Now, I want to talk about vocabulary in this video, and I want to talk specifically about how important is learning vocabulary. Now, I think on one hand, vocabulary is crucial. Learning new words and expanding your vocabulary and learning them in a point where it's deep into the mind and you really understand the words, that is super duper important. Without vocabulary, you can't actually learn a language, okay? Now, the thing, however, and this is kind of what inspired this video here, is I think sometimes people will overemphasize or rather put too much energy on vocabulary and just memorizing words. You see, the thing is, I've met a decent amount of people, enough people to be making this video, who feel like if I just memorize enough words, I'll be able to speak blah, blah, blah language. Like if I just memorize a lot of words in Spanish, I'll be able to speak and communicate and read and understand and all this stuff in Spanish or French or whatever language. But that's actually not true. That's not true at all. Because language learning has so many more elements than just learning new words and memorizing vocabulary. First of all, there's the grammar. There's the grammar associated with all the words you're learning. There's actually being able to remember the words and implement them and apply them in real life scenarios. There's things such as understanding how the words change based on context. For example, I, in English, would say, he's a successful person, but I would also say, he did that successfully. So successful is changing to successfully based on context. I guess now that I'm saying that, that ties into grammar, but irrespective of it, there's a lot more than simply memorizing words. And so, although learning vocabulary, although learning words, although it's like the thing, it's so important, there's so much more to it. You have to practice speaking, you have to actually practice hearing the words and recognizing them. And literally, if all you're doing is just pushing yourself to remember words, pushing yourself to remember more words, more words, more words, more words, this, that, the other thing, that's amazing. But please understand that is only one element of language learning. I want to tie one last thing into this, which is related, but it's kind of on a tangent. When it comes to vocabulary, right? I think one thing that tends to happen is people learn the words, but they're just kind of learning them in a very random way. They're just trying to shove them into their brain. They're just trying to memorize them. They just try and write them down. They just think, if I just write the words down a lot, or if I just keep reading them over and over and over and over and over and over, or if I keep doing that, I'm going to remember. Literally just the other day, I was talking to a lady who's telling me that in her Spanish class, she writes down everything the teacher says. She says, I write it down, I go home, I make the flashcards and everything, and I write and I write and I write, but she's struggling. But she's still really struggling, can't remember most, if not all, of what she's learned in the class. And I think it was just a reminder to me that, number one, when you're learning vocabulary, you must learn it in context. You must learn it in the context of how you would use it. You must write in your book. You know, if you learn the word cow, think about a contextual way that you would actually remember or use the word cow. For example, maybe your dad is a farmer, a dairy farmer, and he has lots of cows. You might write in your book, in, let's say, Spanglish, some English, some Spanish, my uncle, or my dad has lots and lots of vacas. Vacas is cows in Spanish, right? Think of another one. Write that one down. Try something else to bring it into context. right? When you see someone, go do language exchanges and have a specific goal of using the word vacas, at least, or vaca, 1 time or 2 times or whatever it is. You have to learn words in context, and you have to apply them in some way, shape, or form. You can't simply read them over and over, or do flashcards over and over, or write them, excuse me, write it over and over. Literally, in my Mandarin class right now that I'm taking, one of the biggest secrets to how I've been able to learn characters and new words so freaking quickly is what I'll do is when I see new characters that I don't know how to write, I first write the character a few times to get my brain used to the character and what I have to do. I'll look at it, I'll try and copy it, then I cover it, I try and write it without reading it. But then I start to make random sentences. Sometimes they don't make any sense. Like today I wrote some random dialogue in my book. It was like, hey, Mr. Waiter, or hey, Mr. Waiter, is there MSG and salt in your food? And the guy's like, no, we don't even have MSG. We don't even have food. We have hot and sour soup. And then I said, isn't hot and sour soup a type of food? He goes, no, it's just a stupid, ridiculous dialogue I'm writing, but it's making me use it, and it's making me invent reasons and create a conversation and use the words in a semi-practical scenario. And even with a semi-practical scenario, I remember the stuff way faster. Even better for me, now that I'm thinking about it, feedback I'm giving myself would be to use it in an even more practical scenario. Go find a Mandarin native speaker and talk with them, have a real conversation, and you bring up some of the new words I'm learning. Or even if I wrote a realistic dialogue, something I would actually say, or something that's more real, or something that's more memorable than this nonsense of this Mr. Waiter and whatnot. Like, I think that's another really big thing when it comes to vocabulary, and it ties into grammar. When you're writing, for example, when I'm writing these new sentences, right, with these words that I've been learning in class, it's also practicing grammar points. It's making me use different grammar points that I've learned in the past and making me apply them. So it's actually funny because then all of a sudden you get, that guy thought I was video recording him. There's a guy walking by, and because my phone's facing here, I guess he might have thought it was facing out the window and pointing at him. He gave me a very strange look. Anyway, when I'm doing this vocabulary study, by actually applying it, I'm simultaneously at the same time doing grammar study. And so all of a sudden, when you take that kind of holistic approach, it allows you to improve not only your vocabulary, but grammar and other elements of the language as well. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. Really appreciate your attention. And yeah, we'll talk later. Bye for now, guys. See you.